Welcome back to the Exam Room podcast. Today's conversation is one that I think many healthcare leaders and clinicians need to hear. In healthcare, especially in value-based care and FQHC environments, we're constantly measured. Annual wellness visit rates, screening percentages, patient volumes, quality dashboards. But here's the question. Are we measuring what truly matters? Or are we measuring what's easiest to count? Today I'm joined by Kathy Letendre, advisor, consultant, former healthcare executive, and now a member of the global PUMP team. Kathy works with leaders across North America to help them achieve transformational improvements, not through quick fixes, but through intentional, sustained improvement over time. Kathy, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so before we get started, I'd love for you to share a little bit more about your own journey from healthcare executive to advisor supporting leaders, and tell us a little bit about what shaped your thinking about transformation.
Yeah, I would say the single most thing that shaped my thinking about transformation was my role as a healthcare administrator. So I spent the first half of my career as a healthcare administrator, as a executive in the community-based healthcare system. And that experience of creating real and lasting change, like on the ground, really is what has shaped my work ever since. This particular organization set out to really remake itself. The organization declared a vision to become the best community healthcare system in England, the best and community healthcare system. There are other what people might think of as academic healthcare systems, and weren't seeking to outdo them, but we wanted to be the best community healthcare system in New England. But we were starting from a place of average in every sense of the word, average in our clinical quality outcomes and our patient experience and how employees felt about the workplace, our financials. We were average at best, but we declared this vision to become the best. And once we declared that vision, it really set a spark for a true organizational transformation. Mm-hmm. We sort of methodically transformed every part of the organization, and the results followed. I mean, to the point where we were getting external validation from every kind of recognition and award, from, best places to work to patient experience awards to quality and safety awards, best this and best that. So we truly went from average to excellent. That transformational experience changed me forever. And I wanted to help more organizations experience the same thing. And so that's really the work I do now, helping organizations to go from wherever they are, whether that's average, to something excellent that they're striving for.
That is so amazing. And I'm wondering if when our listeners hear you say transformation, they're thinking, oh my gosh, we have to completely reinvent ourselves and, have this dramatic overhaul. But real transformation isn't about remaking so much as it is about the beginning and the sustaining, right, over time. So you and I had a planning session before we recorded this episode, and you said genuine transformation takes time. Why do you think leaders underestimate that?
Oh, that's a great question. I think leaders today, and for a long time, want quick fixes, sort of give me the Cliff Notes version of that. We live now in a world where everyone has instant access to so many things. And so we've come to expect that everything should just take an instant to have it. It takes a special leader to stick with something for a very long time. And so those organizations that say, they want a quick fix, or, to grow their market share by, 20% in a year. I mean, those things just don't happen that fast. It's because we live in this world where everyone wants everything right now.
Yeah. To be in my mind, I see like this big machine, and it takes so long to get it moving and going, right? And then it's humming along, and then you have to bring it to a stop, turn it around, and get going another direction. And if leadership doesn't have the patience to lead that transformation, I guess I'm trying to say from the top to the bottom of the organization, that's going to set them up for failure and probably a lot of frustration as well, I would guess.
Yeah, it's funny. My CEO was my right-hand partner on the transformation that I led from the inside, and he was anything but patient. But he learned that he didn't have to be patient in his head. He could be dreaming up, the 10th and 20th next idea, but he had to be patient out here. So I remember a coach told me, you don't have to be patient. You're never going to be that, but you have to act more patient, right? So I'm working with a leader of an FQHC right now, and I gave her similar advice. This can go 100 miles a minute up here in your head, but what comes out about their priorities, that needs to be more reasoned and more thought out.
I think that's such great advice, to say, hey, it's okay to think this way, but in reality, you just have to check yourself and realize that this is something that's going to take time and you're going to have to stay at it. So, my question for you is, what happens to organizations when they try to accelerate transformation too quickly?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I see when they try to move too fast, one, they lose people. They lose people's interest. People sort of give up on their new thing every day.
Mm.
The other thing I notice is they sort of put band-aids on big gaping wounds. They try to, just put a quick fix in place on something that really needs a deeper examination, right? If I use kind of the medical analogy, they just treat the symptoms without trying to understand the underlying cause. And so leaders like this, they just try to roll out things so fast without giving time for the organization to adjust and integrate the change and truly make that change the new way of doing something. And so I encourage organizations that I'm working with to have the leaders go first, right? Any kind of change that we're asking of the organization, we need to sort of dig in and understand and develop our comfort level and our skill and our capability with it first.
Can you think of an example off the top of your head of a band aid fix that you've experienced or help an organization work through?
Yeah, one that comes to mind, there was an organization, a CEO and a board that I was working with, and they had developed sort of a strained relationship with each other over time. And the board reached out because they wanted me to sort of fix the CEO, to put it in kind words. And, I helped them to realize that they had a strained relationship and that it was going to take time for them to rebuild trust in each other. And, we worked through a process over a few months, and we really did reestablish them as partners and reestablish that trust. But, that doesn't take an instant to rebuild trust.
Absolutely. I can think of a colleague of mine that was a scrub tech with me back in the day, and then she taught with me in one of my surgical technology programs. And she was telling me the story of being at one facility where she couldn't get along with this nurse. And so the OR manager brought them both into the office and said, I'm going to keep putting you guys in the same room until you figure out how to work together. And she said eventually they did learn how to, not necessarily like each other, but they learned how to work as a team and how to collaborate together. Going back to this idea of transformation and the thought that we have to remake everything, right? But we don't have to remake everything. Can you expand on that a little bit?
I use this word transformation, and what I really mean by it is organizations that want to make themselves better by leaps and bounds, right? So whether they call it a transformation or continuous improvement, something about either their internal or external system, they want to get better and better by a lot. That doesn't mean that you have to throw everything out and start over. I really think it's most important to let the results lead you. What do I mean by that? Well, what is your vision? What are your big goals? How are you doing on those things? And then let the measures, the data, the results steer you towards what most needs attention right now. If we try to fix everything at once or transform everything at once, we'll end up with a mess. So I'm a big proponent of let the results, the outcomes drive the priorities, and not the other way around.
Yeah, it's kind of like that saying, begin with the end in mind.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Know what you're trying to get to. Have a way of knowing how you're going along, and let the measures and the priorities help you stay focused.
Yes, absolutely. So when we talked before, you mentioned courage being a key ingredient to this transformational process. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
It takes courage to acknowledge that you don't have all the answers. It takes courage to involve those closest to the patient, closest to the work, to help come up with solutions. It takes courage to ask what if, right? To be willing to try new things. It does take courage to be willing to do things in a new way, in a different way, to try, to experiment, to learn, and to adjust. So yeah, that's why I think about this kind of work requiring courage.
So, working in an industry, of course, that is wrought with change, that is overwhelming in and of itself. And then we have this constant regulatory shifts and policy changes and all of these things now more than ever. So, in your experience, how can leadership begin this journey without completely destabilizing their teams?
It's about taking the time as a leadership team to be clear on your strategic direction. Where are we going and why? Sort of what are we seeking to become and why? And that is the place to start, because that will help you then to make intentional change, but intentional change towards an end. Our organizations, they know when we're sort of making it up, but if we're clear about where we're going, then people can contribute in so many more ways than if it's vague and uncertain. And so I believe people are in healthcare because they want to make a difference. They've joined our organizations because they see something special about what we're doing. And so I think we owe it to our organizations to reach that crystal clear clarity around what we're trying to do. That helps people align their energy, their daily work, their improvement energy around this bigger picture, this common end goal.
I think involvement from the front lines, all the way to, the C suite is really important. And like you said, the why. And I also think about the with right? What's in it for me? Like if it's for me personally making a difference in somebody's lives, then how is this thing that we're doing going to help me do that better, and really being able to communicate that, to the different teams that are supporting your transformational changes, whatever those may be.
Absolutely. And I think, just building off of that, I mean, that is really where exceptional middle managers shine. I mean, middle management is the hardest job in the world, right? We're in the middle. Great middle managers can translate, right? They can translate those needs from the frontline staff and nurses and MAs and front office staff to senior leadership, but they can also translate in the other direction to take maybe a goal or a project that we're starting on and how to translate that on what's in it for their team members. I value middle managers so much because they are often caught in the middle, but if they become exceptional translators, they just magnify everything.
Yes, absolutely. I think that is such a great point, and not just communicating back and forth between both sides, let's say, what we're doing and why we're doing it, but if something's not working, like you've given us this, thing and we're trying to execute it down the line, but XYZ isn't working, or there's a barrier or there's a challenge, and taking that back to leadership to say, hey, like, this is what's going on, and how do we navigate that sort of thing.
You've been listening to the Exam Room Podcast. In part 2 of this conversation, Kathy explores what it truly takes to lead transformation, from the courage required to challenge the status quo to the role leaders play in guiding change without overwhelming their teams. If you're navigating change in a healthcare organization, the next episode offers practical insight you won't want to miss. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss part 2.